I would want in a representative, and I hope to take with myself, is that it really has nothing to do with me. It's not, I'm not getting elected. I'm basically just a voice for everyone
Yeah.
in my district. Like our most basic needs are food, water, shelter, sleep. So
Hmm.
we need to make sure we're coming back to like we have to have the most essential things before we
Yep.
can worry about all this other stuff.
Yeah.
It's particularly important in a desert like Arizona, where we're not right next to a large body of water. All these things are skills that should be taught to kids in schools
Yeah.
so that they have those skills and they can go through life with those skills instead of waiting until there's some kind of catastrophe that they feel like they can't manage.
Looking for real stories of real people making a difference in the Grand Canyon State? Welcome to Finding Arizona podcast. We sit down with Arizona's inspiring entrepreneurs, creatives, and community leaders and give you a front row seat to their journeys, passions, and projects. Whether you're a local trying to find a hidden gem or just enjoy watching someone chase their dreams, Finding Arizona is your go-to place for authentic conversations with a desert twist. New episodes drop weekly, so hit subscribe and start exploring Arizona one story at a time.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Finding Arizona podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jose. And today's guest, as you can see from her very like technically beautifully put together background, we have Laura with us. And I have an intro for her. She's our guest today that bridges nature, compassion, mental health, and public service. Laura, as growing up on a wildlife in the wildlife refuge among
Wildlife refuge.
yeah generations of farmers. Laura has was raised with deep respect of the land, community, and the idea that when something needs care, you don't wait for someone else to fix it. You step up and do your part. Now she is running for state senate in legislative district 25, bringing the politics the same values she lived by: empathy, integrity, hard work, and service. She believes in leadership that listens and that grounds itself in evidence and compassion, and that fights for clean water, air, access to quality health care, strong public schools, and sustainable future for all. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Laura Huber. Huber, sorry, Laura
Super.
Huber. We just went through this, but thank you again for being a part of our show, and again for also being a continuing open door policy to a lot of candidates to come and seek us out and give us a little bit of their history. So thank you again.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. I am
Absolutely.
excited to just talk about my campaign and what's brought me to being here and just this amazing work. I'm really
Yeah.
excited. I feel like being a mental health counselor has really just guided me into a place where for years or over a decade, I've been
Mhm.
helping people on a one-on-one basis. And I've worked in a lot of different areas. Like I've been a counselor for a jail. I've overseen crisis mobile teams.
Yeah.
I've worked in homeless outreach. All these experiences have guided me into knowing some policy changes that we need that would really help people at a larger level. And so that's really what's brought me to running is just the personal experiences I've had with these people and these systems and
Sure.
knowing how we can make changes that can really help us to have a better outcome for all.
I really do appreciate you giving me a little bit of insight in that world of your history. And that's typically how we just start off these questions is give us a little bit of origin story, how you best put it, some of the stuff that even in your early childhood that would be foundational to not only what you're doing today, but just growing up, those things that we see on a daily basis. Was there, I quickly always ask this
Yeah.
because of what you do on what your history is and what you're doing now. Is there anyone in your family history that was in politics? Just to name and start off from there.
Both of my parents actually met working in Washington, D.C. They're both from South
Nice.
Dakota, but they were working in Washington, D.C. doing different things. My mom was a secretary for a congressman, and I don't know exactly what my dad's job title was, but he was helping out as well, and they met there.
That's
Um,
wonderful.
yeah, so they do have a little experience in that area, but it was something that I really had never considered until recently when I just felt like when I have experience now that could be really helpful for people. And
Mhm.
we definitely need a lot more compassion and empathy in our government.
Yes.
So I hope that's something that I'll be able to take there. But you mentioned a little bit about my history. I come from about five generations of farmers and ranchers on both sides of my family. So soybeans and corn is mostly what my dad's side of the family did, and my mom's side of the family is dairy farmers.
Oh,
So a long history of being deeply embedded in that culture. And then my
yeah.
dad also worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So that's why
Great.
my bio says that I grew up on wildlife refuges because that's where we always were. We were living where
Yeah.
my dad was working. And I would say we probably lived on about four different wildlife refuges while I was growing up.
Nice.
And I grew up mostly in Nebraska, which is a largely farming community. And then
Yeah.
I moved to Arizona for graduate school. So I have a
Okay.
bachelor's degree in biochemistry and psychology with a chemistry minor.
Nice.
And then I went to graduate school for mental health counseling.
Mhm.
And I got my independent license, started my own counseling business in 2013. And then I've been seeing adolescents and adults ever since then, mostly to help them with trauma and anxiety
Yeah.
and relationship issues, which I absolutely love. It's very rewarding, very meaningful work.
Mhm. There's so much there. I mean, I could go in so many different directions. Just overall, like how beautiful. And they this is more funny today because we don't
Mhm.
see it as much. Is that the amount of time you've spent outside and just enjoying the wildlife and the nature that we have here, and even probably earlier than that, throughout the different states that you've probably seen the different biomes. That must be incredibly moving for you, especially as a youngster, seeing that on the changes and how nature works overall, the processes and water and all of that movement. Um, I'll ask you this because it's kind of fascinating to me from your childhood life in those refuge, or just the work in the mental health. Sorry, you've been seen firsthand how deeply connected people are to the land and to each other. How did these early experiences shape the vision that you want to bring for state senate?
Oh my gosh, in so many ways. I mean, I feel so strongly about protecting public lands.
Mhm.
I feel like currently this administration, not that I feel like, but has made a lot of choices, allowing oil drilling in what were previously preserved lands,
Yeah.
allowing mining in areas that shouldn't be taking place, that destroys natural habitats for wildlife. And wildlife are
Mhm.
such an important part of our world and our society and our ability to function and be healthy
Mhm.
human beings. And we need to be good caretakers of the
Yeah.
land. So I feel like that's a huge part of it. One of the major concerns, policy issues in Arizona is related to water. And
Yes.
so I feel like that's another thing that's just very, very important in terms of preservation for me is
Mhm.
making sure we have access to clean water and just access to water, period. There's
Mhm.
a lot going on with the Colorado River, which is where we get most of our water now.
Yeah.
But there's several other states that are taking water from the Colorado River, including the country of Mexico. They're going to have to renegotiate an agreement next year. So we'll
Mhm.
see how all of that goes.
Yeah.
But I've
It's
consulted. Go ahead.
Oh, no, no, I was just gonna say it's incredible that you've already taken foresight into those kind of issues that you want to jump in right away. And it's incredible that you have foresight in seeing that as one of those big tasks that need to be addressed.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely essential. I think sometimes, there are so many very, very important issues. It's easy to get lost in those like higher order needs, whereas like our most basic needs are food, water, shelter, sleep. So
Hmm.
we need to make sure we're coming back to like we have to have the most essential things before we
Yep.
can worry about all this other stuff.
Yeah.
It's particularly important in a desert like Arizona, where we're not right next to a large body of water. And so I've consulted with some water experts in our state, and
Hmm.
the consensus is like we're going to need to start desalination. We're going to need to develop a desalination plant. We're going to need to find a way to route water from the ocean. We'll probably need a nuclear power plant to be able to provide the energy necessary for that desalination plant. All of that costs a lot of money, but it's
Absolutely.
one of those things that we'll really have to work on accepting and working toward for future generations because the Colorado River is not going to be able to continue to create the amount of water necessary for so many states and another country in Mexico.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest fights that I feel like is kind of under not under wraps, but more of just a silent build upon more issues and more issues. And
Mhm.
it's because that we don't really see it on a daily basis. Whereas some of the other city and towns that are along that water site is again just seeing it being taken and swallowed up by states like other states around us that need it too as well, and then it trickles down all the way as it's moving naturally to the country of Mexico. And so
Mhm.
you know this fight is coming to our door quicker than most of us anticipate, but it's definitely something that I hope the people who represent us will notice and take really at least an account of like how many of their constituents really do need it and care and need us to care for it as well. So um I will kind of move us along forward just to kind of for the sake of like the conversation of I want to get as many of the voters who are in your district get their questions answered, but also just curious onlookers that are outside of your legislation district
Mhm.
that might want to just understand you a little bit more. Give us a little bit more insight into your time with working with the jails and with the mental health and just firstly, I would love to ask you, was
Mhm.
there any particular reason why you chose that in your graduate degree? And then on top of that, I would love to just understand something that you wish every voter understood about the connection between mental health and public policy.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. As far as your question about what drew me into the field of mental health, I feel like I've always just wanted to have a meaningful career. To me, a meaningful career would be one in which I can help other people and contribute to the world
Sure.
in some way. And I know that kind of
Sure.
sounds cheesy, but
No, it
that's
makes
the
total
truth.
sense. Like when
That's
we're 18, 20, we just want to give ourselves to something.
Yes. And I feel like I've always been a really good listener and I've always just been naturally empathetic and wanted to help as much as I can. And I just absolutely love learning about people and what motivates them and why
Yeah.
they make the choices they do. And that's, what makes my life feel the most meaningful is when I feel like I've made positive change in someone else's life.
Yeah.
And so I feel like um, it wasn't like I was a mental health counselor and then I became a certain way. It's like who I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
fit into being a mental health counselor. And I
Yeah.
feel like, again, promoting positive change at a larger policy level is, again, just an extension of who I am
Mhm.
naturally. What was your second question?
It was the what you wish every voter understood about the connection between mental health and public policy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Mental health is just an essential part of everything. I mean, I feel like a
Yeah.
lot of the things that we are taught are so applicable at any level,
Mhm.
having healthy coping skills for one, but just I feel like my one-on-one experiences with all of my clients, it makes me wiser. It
Mhm.
helps me to understand changes that can be made that can be helpful to people.
Mhm.
Certainly, I think one of the big things that would be useful is having more mental health
Yeah.
access, especially in the school system.
Yeah.
I hear from a lot of adolescents about how they might have like one school counselor, and that person's usually extremely busy and
Mhm.
can only do like essential things like maybe evaluation for a serious illness or things like that,
Yeah.
mental health
Yeah.
issue. And we need our kids to be able to talk about like what's going on at home and how you can work through relationship issues. And I really feel strongly that a lot of the skills I teach to adults, who are coming into counseling services like interpersonal effectiveness and emotion regulation,
Yeah.
and mindfulness. All these things are skills that should be taught to kids in schools
Yeah.
so that they have those skills and they can go through life with those skills instead
Mhm.
of waiting until there's some kind of catastrophe that they feel like they can't manage. And then they might go to counseling.
Yeah.
Um, so I feel like we really have to take the stigma of mental health away and to know that absolutely everyone has mental health, just like they have physical
Yeah.
health. and
Well,
that
I
you
think
all can benefit from counseling.
I 100% agree with you, and I think that as we've come out of a serious thing like the pandemic, which we saw a lot more isolated individuals and groups and people asking for help on a more routine basis, and one of the things that I find a silver lining about this whole mess that came out of it was that I feel like that stigma has gone away just a little bit, not overall
Better,
100%,
for sure.
but there's a better grasp and representation around it. So, and I've, as a newborn or new father, I really do want that to be just as important because I feel like he needs it, but also it's also one of those things that something that I didn't get when I was a lot as a kid. So you always want to give more than what you had as a child. So that's something that I've tried to instill a little bit more of in my regular routine stuff is just things
Mhm.
like motivating him, giving him words of affirmation, trying to help him understand and how to regulate those emotions by allowing him to put words to feelings and things like that, where it gives him more um, representation of himself, but also identity towards something that is unknown. That is, I think, gives him more grasp of emotion. So it's a lot, but I find it very cathartic in that I have my own feelings and emotions regulated in trying to help him understand
Sure.
himself a little bit more. So we both feed off of each other, and it's a really great thing being a
Yeah.
newborn or a new parent in this day and age. So I really do appreciate you giving me that kind of insight on your end. And I
Mhm.
wanted to just pull back a little bit because we did talk about water security and kind of like climate resilience, and that's something that is a major challenge for your district, District 25.
Mhm.
What does responsible stewardship look like to you, and how would you approach solutions that work for both families and farmers, which is a big part of your
Glad that
what
you're
you're fighting for?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I think there seems to be this battle for unknown reasons between farmers and everyone else about who gets
Yeah.
access to water. I don't know that the farmers want to be participating in it. They're just trying
They're
to
just
raise
yeah.
their crops and feed us.
Yes.
But obviously, farming does take a lot of water.
Mhm.
And so I think that's a place that I really maybe hope to be able to bring more light to, because I think when there's division, a lot of times it's just due to a lack of understanding or maybe
Mm.
a lack of information.
Yeah.
So, for instance, I don't know how many people know that Yuma produces a huge amount of the food for our nation, especially during winter months.
Yes.
And so it's really just important that we recognize, of course, they're going to need to use a lot of water in order to create food that's feeding a good portion of the nation. And so I think the solution is knowing that giving to a group, whether that be farmers
Hmm.
or housing for the city or whatever it might be, doesn't
Yes.
have to take away from the other. Like both are important.
Hmm.
And we can find solutions that address both and
Yeah.
that help both, including just bringing more water into our state. I think that's ultimately what we want to do is help everyone,
Yeah.
not make it a zero sum game where like only this group or only this group get it. And it's just causing division where it doesn't need to be. Everybody needs to eat. Everybody needs farmers,
Yes.
and their work is absolutely essential.
I love how we get so far down the road and we have our opinions on, but it's I feel like you lose track of the simplicity of like you need certain things in life where it's like, food. Well, do you remember where your food comes from? Remember that thing called a farmer? It's like
Yeah.
let's kind of like let's pull back the string just a little bit and yank at it and remember that it comes from somewhere. So I do appreciate you giving me again, the understanding of like, we feed one hand, but it doesn't mean that we're taking away from another. We're just trying to facilitate a happy medium for all and make sure that we overall are living a healthier and happier life for the state as a whole. Um,
One of
That
my
will.
favorite quotes
Oh,
is, "Your success is not my failure."
hmm.
And I think that's applicable to, like, we can give water to multiple areas.
Hmm.
We can ensure equality for women. That doesn't take away the rights of
Yeah,
men. I think
exactly.
there's so many places where we really need to be able to apply that more
Yeah.
often.
One of the quotes that I've been saying recently, and I just learned about it not too long ago, was the quote of communities are built by those who plant trees they know they'll never sit underneath the shade
Yes,
of.
I love that quote as well.
And so that's something
We
that
need more
I've,
people like that doing those things.
yeah, and I feed off of those who come on the show and share what they're doing to make that quote come to life in our state. And that's something that I find and cherish a lot more nowadays. So we're getting into a little bit of like that, the idea of leadership and what you're doing these days in trying to be a leader yourself. One of the things that I've learned is that you've talked a lot about that leadership is something that listens first. Can you
Yes.
share a time in your career when listening changed your perspective and how you'd bring that approach into policy making process?
Oh, absolutely. I realized one of the questions that you had posed earlier was like how working in the jail affected
Mhm.
me and what I learned from that. And I think that's a place where listening and also just being present and observing
Yeah.
really
Yes.
taught me a
Yes.
lot, because I think people who have never walked into a jail or prison probably think that everyone that's there is like horrible, or they know that they were doing bad
Mhm.
things when they shouldn't have. And what I very upsettingly found was that there's a lot of veterans with post-traumatic stress.
Mhm.
There are people with lower cognitive functioning that really should not be there, that probably don't have the ability to conceptualize what they did or why, or that it
Yep.
was not okay. People just trying to avoid homelessness. And also, the system is, in the way that it is presently, is toxic because it promotes people reoffending,
Yeah.
because you're grouping all these people together. You might have an 18-year-old who's just a child being put in the same jail as someone who's like committed murder.
Yep.
And that's certainly not going to be sculpting a safer, healthier society or helping people to grow. And they really don't get access to tools that would help them, like
Mhm.
getting a GED or taking college classes, or getting the appropriate level of mental health care. That was one of the things I found the most upsetting, was that when I was working in the jail, I was one counselor for an entire jail, and there were 300 appointments rolling over every day.
Yeah.
Obviously, as one person, there's absolutely no way that I could ever see 300 people in one day. And so
Yes.
I would continually reach out and say, we need more counselors, we need more help here. And the system is built such that they're like, no, we're not doing that. Like, you just have to deal with it. And I'm not okay with systems that don't provide quality treatment and quality care. And if we were doing more to help people to grow, they
Hmm.
wouldn't be just repeating the same behavior.
Yes.
So I really believe very strongly in restorative justice, and helping people to make amends and work through what they've done and to grow and to learn how to be healthier people in the future.
Yeah.
But we also really need to make sure that we're funneling people in the right way. Like, we really have to make sure veterans are getting counseling treatment.
Hmm.
And I could talk on and on about all of these different issues, because one of the things that I realized in working with military professionals is a lot of times they don't want to have a diagnosis. They don't
Hmm.
want it to be known that they're receiving treatment, because then they can be sidelined. They can be told, oh, you can't
Yeah.
do such
Yeah.
and such anymore because you have this mental health issue. And that really has to change. That happens for pilots too, where
Hmm.
if they're receiving appropriate treatment so that they can feel better,
Yeah.
they might be told you can't fly.
Yep.
And we really have to change those things, because that doesn't keep people with mental health issues from doing those things. That keeps them from getting treatment.
Yeah. The adage of like, if, if we don't talk about it, it gets worse, that sort of thing. And I really do appreciate that you come from a place of empathy and care,
Mhm.
because again, there are people who will look at the outcome of being incarcerated and just put a negative stamp on that individual and
Mhm.
expect zero or no kind of responsibility or kind of even look at them as a certain kind of human with respect.
Mhm.
And it's harmful. It really does because the person who may have made the mistake can I believe in change. I believe that there are people who come out of learning from something, being in a place where you're not really in a positive light, but just overall like you want to get out, and that wanting to get out can change people a lot. And I've seen some really great stories. I mean, we've had them on our show where um, individuals who were incarcerated come out and they learn from their mistakes. And I have one success story that I love talking about that he's doing what I'm doing. He loves podcasting, he loves speaking, he loves storytelling, and that has been such a really overwhelming emotional connection to me because it just meant that something that I just show off or like to do and really found a passion for connected to another individual, and he's made it his career just as much. And to have that kind of ripple effect is very it makes me happy. At least it gives me an opportunity to keep sharing and feel like I'm moving towards something and giving more out to those who like what I have to say or like what we have to show off in the show.
Yes, definitely.
So one of the things that I'll bring up, in our conversation is that you are running, and one of the things that you're running as is a clean elections candidate, which
Yes.
emphasizes transparency and grassroots support, which I very much am about and supporter of. But
Mhm.
why was that path important to you, and how do you think it changes the kind of leadership people can expect from you?
Yeah, definitely. So for those that don't know, when you're running clean, you have to get a certain number of $5 donations
Yes.
toward your campaign. So for me, it's about 250.
Mhm.
And once I have those, then I turn them in to our Secretary of State, the Clean Elections Group. And in return, they give me public funding. And so
Perfect.
that really helps us to have campaigns and representatives who are not controlled by private monies.
Yes.
And so we don't want corporations and lobbyists to be determining who gets into Congress because
Yes.
then they expect kickbacks, right? That's why we have these very problematic things happening in our society presently. That's why,
Mhm.
the people at the top are deciding how everything else goes, and we don't want that. We want
Yeah.
everyone's voice to matter. And so a huge part of running clean is knowing that I am not going to be having someone pull and say, well, we gave you this money, and so you
Yeah.
better do what we say when it comes to being a senator. And so I, of course, am here to do what's best for the most people and
Love it.
not for the top 1% by any means. I hope the top 1% gets taxed heavily. I don't think anybody needs to be a billionaire. I feel like once you hit a billion, you should be like all of that has to go back to
Yes.
our society for good.
I,
So yes, that's a
I
huge part of why I'm running clean.
I think you gave a very perfect representation of what a lot of people are thinking these days as far as the taxation on those who have a lot to I try my best to endear myself to a lot of people, and one of the things that ekes me or irks me the most is the fact that it's like, yeah, to get the B or the even the million, like the 100 millionaires, it's like you step on a lot of other people, or at least I
Mhm.
don't know, the weird feeling of like, having that much money. It's just it gives me a weird feeling because it's like
Yeah.
that means someone else doesn't have a lot too, and there's this weird kind of it gives me a lot of to think about most nights of like, how successful in the world of life do I want to be? What does that look like? How do I want to caretake for it? What is my identity behind what I do, and all those sorts of things. I'd rather just I like this. This gives me a lot of connections to individuals, and have I feel like more like a librarian who truly cares about the stories that come through my door, and give me a chance to be the connector to the audience as well. It's like, hey, I really like Representative Huber. It's I think it gives me a chance to also really connect in the way that most people wouldn't, which is, having a little bit more of a personal touch. So one of the stories or one of the questions I like to lean on too is outside of this, you are someone who comes from, the farmer's life and things like that. I truly do want to know. It's like, were you in 4-H as a kid?
I was.
So it's like,
There's
what
probably
was,
people that don't even know what that is,
yeah,
but
I just want them to like see you in a new light because again, those 4-H kids were fun. Like, did you have a horse growing up? What kind of
I did.
responsibilities did you have with that?
Yes, yes. It's so funny that you asked those questions. Yeah. I mean, yes, I've helped put in fence posts. I've
Awesome.
done hard physical labor.
Yes.
I've helped plants. I've been to brandings for cattle and helped give them
Awesome.
like the shots that they need. And
Yes.
so yeah, I have a lot of I did have a horse that I absolutely loved. It was an old horse named Smokey, such a
Oh,
great temperament for little kids when I had
yeah.
it. It was my best friend's horse before mine. So,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely love horses. I definitely had a different upbringing than a lot of people. Like my summers would be like hanging out with the resident biologist who was studying turtle eggs, and we would like go and help him find the
Yeah.
turtle eggs.
I
So,
love that because
uh,
again, it shows insight into how much, again, this wanting to see the representative in a new light and see someone who's caring enough to be like, hey, look, I know the neighborhood that you grow up in. I've seen it. I've been through it. I've lived even with nature itself, like the animals that are getting tagged or at least
mhm.
living their own lives out in nature. And it's just important that someone cares enough to be like, hey, look, I've been able to see this from, all sorts of different perspectives. I want to give my insight and share with you why it's important to have this policy take place versus this other policy. So again, I cherish the fact that you grew up the way that you did because we need more individuals who care as much as you do and empathize with not only the human factor but nature overall, like what's going around because it's just as important from the water that we drink, where the food comes from, how much we caretake for our own homes is what we get back out from it. So it's again a true nicety in life that I get to talk to you on this scale and be
Oh,
able
thank
to
you.
like share your story. So I will now kind of I know that the goal, because we usually talk about goal setting towards the end of our conversation and what that looks like to you but my thing right now, knowing that you're seeking candidacy is
Mhm.
let's say you do win. What does after you, let's say, win the big ticket, what is it like a little personal celebration that you're going to, I guess, do? Is there something that's like been on your mind about like, okay, if I get the W, I'm going to go walk outside and enjoy my last few moments of freedom before going
Oh,
into work hectic mode?
I honestly haven't even thought about a celebration after winning. I feel like there's so many steps in
Yes.
between now and
Yes.
hopefully something like that taking place. But I
Yes.
think, one of the things I would want in a representative, and I hope to take with myself, is that it really has nothing to do with me. It's not, I'm not getting elected.
Mm.
I'm basically just a voice for everyone
Yeah.
in my district. And so I think the celebration would be shared joy with people in my district
Love
that
that.
I will listen. Like my celebration is going to be we're going to listen, we're going to work hard, we're going to do everything in our power to help the most people and not leave anybody out.
Hmm.
Um, that I feel like the Republican side of things for a long time, again, has just been focused on what a corporation or a lobbyist or billionaire wants, or Donald Trump, unfortunately. And we just need so much more compassion and empathy and listening and
Mhm.
understanding and hearing from the voices of the people that are the experts in their area.
Yeah.
Like you were talking about earlier, there's a huge difference between a candidate who knows nothing about farming or just hasn't had personal experience with it and someone who has, or someone that's talking about change in the jail system that hasn't even been in one before,
Yeah.
so I really feel like a huge part of why I thought I should run was because I have these very legitimate experiences that
Mhm.
qualify me. Um,
Yes.
but going back to the celebration, I mean, I would be so happy, but not necessarily for myself, just more so that we
Mhm.
have other Democrats that can finally,
Yeah.
hopefully, make some of the policy changes that are
Yeah.
necessary for people to benefit. Like, and when I say people, I mean everybody, instead
Hmm.
of just these subsections of people that
I love that.
are not as empathetic.
I mean, again, I go back to I kind of keep this as an open door policy for all the candidates to come through and talk with me because so far I haven't had as many for the last 10 years. I don't know if it's just for the sake of like I haven't really put myself out there, but also the fact that like I truly believe that if you are about your candidacy and really want the people that you have in your district or your voters or whatever it is you want to call them, I think it's important to show up and give a little bit of yourself, share a little bit of yourself, and give us some insight. Because again, I feel like as a consumer or someone who is going to be a voter, I feel more leniency, more openness, more transparency when I can at least say, hey, you answered a couple questions from one of my favorite places to receive information from. I genuinely think that your demeanor, what you believe in, and what you represent is something that I can vote for. And that is definitely what you've given us today. I truly do thank you for your time because I know how precious it is when it comes to this what you want to share and what you want to those to hear from you and especially in a critical time of candidacy and things like that. So I really do want to say thank you because you have really enlightened me to who you are as an individual, but as a candidate, I think you're someone people should be looking out for and really taking sight and notice of. So thank you again for your time today. Before we do let you promote yourself, really quickly.
Yes.
Your parents must be, if they're still around, I have to say they must be very proud because to
Oh,
see
yeah.
a child that, comes from a background, just a little one of
Yeah.
like, because my parents were met in the military. And so that's how I came they met in basic training. So it's just one of those things where it's like when you're child takes up at least a little bit of curiosity in what you used to do for a living or did as a passion, it really does kind of reverberate to you, and you just like it's like a nice feeling to have.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
I
s-
hope so. I hope they're proud of me. I think.
yeah, I think they are. So, give us all of the insight or where, because I know you have the QR codes and it's been available on screen right now, but can you give us a little bit of the website where they can find you at and your social media handles if possible?
Yeah, that would be great. So, one of the things that I should highlight that I think maybe a lot of people aren't aware of is that just to have your name on the ballot so that you're even able to vote for someone, we all have to do nomination petition. So, you see where it says sign here.
Yep.
So, that's one of the most essential pieces right now is that in order for my name to even show up on the ballot in the primary or the general election, I have to
Hmm.
have about 1,100 signatures or so. And
Okay.
they all have to be from people within my legislative district. That's one of the criteria. And they also have to be either undeclared or in the Independent or Democratic Party. And then the other really essential part is qualifying for that public funding. So, like we talked about a little bit earlier, I have to get about 250 people that are willing to donate that $5. So,
Yes.
the websites look the same or very similar when you look at them, but they're actually two different websites. So you have to do it separately. You sign and then you go back out and then you can donate $5. But I would really, really, really so much appreciate it if you could do that, because once I have those things done, then I can really just focus on making sure that I'm meeting as many people as possible and talking to as many people as possible so that I can take all of your concerns with me, and make sure that we're making needed policy changes, instead of having to walk up to people and ask, would you be willing to sign right now a petition?
Yes, I agree. I agree 100%. Thank you again, just to even share that much, because there is a lot of red tape that goes along with this sort of thing, but it's also very important to regulate them and make them understood how this process even gets started. So it's a real insight, and also to your world of government, public representation, all of that, what we're going through. So thank you for sharing. And before we go, you guys can hear every one of our episodes at findingarizonapodcast.com, and all of our social media handles is Finding Arizona Podcast. And we end every conversation with a kisses, hugs, and belly rubs to our four-legged friends, and we will see you next time.